I've spoken to several people already about how they spent all day yesterday out in the yard planning things, getting everything ready, and looking at the rain that's coming out. And I guess we'll be here for a couple of days, so it's all working out well. I guess just to kind of go over within the next 6 weeks. Miss Ruby's planning on being out for 6 weeks, and I will be here the first 4 weeks, and then Jean will be here the second 2 weeks, delivering what God has put on our hearts. And then after that, Miss Ruby comes back fully healed, and just imagine how she'll wield that sword of truth and wisdom with her shoulders. So we look forward to her return, but until then, we'll carry on. So, this lesson came kind of hard, and when I first thought about this, when Miss Ruby asked if I would do it, I thought, well, I'll just pick up where we left off last time about the lessons learned through Joseph's life, and particularly his life in the pit. And it just became like work. It was like digging a hole in my yard, where my yard is full of clay, rocks, and roots, and I literally bring a pickaxe and a hatchet to dig a hole for a geranium. So I was preparing this thing, and it was just like digging one of those holes. I thought, this is just not right. And so I said, okay, God, what is it? This message really started 6, 8 months ago, maybe. We, as a family, have been dealing with financial things, and so I thought, well, it's time to switch out the Lord and fast. So I did a 3-week fast. It's called a Daniel fast, and I lost a lot of weight. It was a terrible fast. But anyway, and in that course, I was doing a financial breakthrough Bible study and other things, and we probably picked up a couple tidbits along the way. But at the end of it, Judy asked, well, what did you learn? I said, well, the only thing I heard from God was be strong and courageous. And I thought, what does that have to do with anything? This is not at all what I wanted to hear or thought would be helpful. But the Lord spoke clearly, be strong and courageous. Matter of fact, I jotted it down one morning. And since then, I've come to believe that being strong and courageous has to do with everything. And so that's where this lesson started back then. And a few weeks ago, I was driving around town, and you'll see on your outline here something I saw over the top spin area, the chin area over there. It says, cowards never start, the weak never finish, and the strong never quit. And so that's pretty much what I'm talking about today, more in spiritual terms than a little temporal. So I just want you to pay a little attention to the outline here. I'm going to adjust it a little bit as we go forward. The first 3 things we're going to talk about are just kind of spiritual truths, I guess. But the 3 things there, the enemy strategies, they're going to move into number 2, where we were born into a world war. So just so you know, I'm jumping around. That's kind of where we're going, where it's going. So we'll begin. And I kind of feel unqualified to do this. I think most people in here already know a lot of this and probably practice it a lot better than I. But I just feel that this is what the Lord had us talk about today. So, first eternal truth is that things are not what they seem. The second one is we are born into a world at war. And number 3 is that we have a crucial role to play in this war. So starting with things are not what they seem, there is a lot more going on in this world than what meets the eye. A lot more. And so the first thing that kind of occurs to me is, in that regard, is Christmas. I think we all know there's a war on Christmas, but that's one aspect. But I, like everyone in here, probably just loves Christmas, and love all the preparations beforehand, love all the family getting together, and the story of Christmas. even though on Christmas Eve we read the story of the Christ child in Luke, our tradition as a family is as we come home on Christmas Eve and we gifts, we read the story again. It's just, it's a wonderful story. I love the whole aspect of it. And that's as Paul Harvey would say, that's one part of the story. The rest of the story is written in Revelation. I'd like for you to turn to Revelation chapter 12. And we'll read verses 1 through 5 and 7 through 8. We all get there. This is kind of contrary to what we think of on Christmas Eve, Christmas night, the silent night where all is calm and all is bright. Revelation 12, verses 1 through 5, I'll read. Now a great sign appeared in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet, and on her head a garland of 12 stars. Then being with child, she cried out in labor and in pain to give birth. And another sign appeared in heaven. Behold, a great fiery red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and 7 diadems on his head. His tail drew 1/3 of the stars of heaven and threw them to the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman, who was ready to give birth, to devour her child, as soon as it was born. She bore a male child, who was to rule all nations with a rod of iron. And her child was caught up to God and his throne. And then we'll skip to 7 and 8. And the war broke out in heaven. Michael and his angels fought with the dragon, and the dragon and his angels fought, but they did not prevail, nor was a place found for them in heaven any longer. So the great dragon was caught and cast down. And that serpent of old, called the devil and Satan, who deceives the whole world, he was cast down to earth, and his angels were cast out with him. And then verse 17. And the dragon was enraged with the woman, and he went to make war with the rest of her offspring, who keep the commandments of God, and who have the testimony of Jesus Christ. So this is the other side of what happened that Christmas night. This was kind of a daring raid by God to invade the ruler of this world. It was kind of like a D-Day invasion, and it ticked off the enemy. And it has been a war ever since. We live in parallel worlds, it seems. One world consists of hills and lakes and trees and politicians and shepherds and barns and, that world we see every day. The world we don't see every day, the angels and the sinister forces that are at work in the spiritual realm are all around us. And yet, as believers, sometimes we see the temporal and not the spiritual side of things. So behind the world of flesh is an even more deadly enemy, the one we rarely speak of, or even much less ready to resist. Yet this is where we live. We're on the front lines of a fierce spiritual war that is to blame for most of the casualties that we see around us. You see around us, everything seems to be chaotic these days. Things are in turmoil. And the enemy is assaulting us in ways that before were less obvious. We need to realize that this war is going on and what to do about it. We need to realize that the Bible speaks of this clearly. And yet, for some reason, as a church, not this church, but as the overall church, we tend to prefer not to engage. So what enrages hell the most, I guess, is the fact that we are born in the image of God. And when he sees that reflection in us, all hell comes against us. The hate of the demons and our enemy is unending and ruthless. So that's what we don't see. Things are not what they seem to be. We've touched on a little bit about this is a war. We are born into a world of war. From the day we were born, we are immersed in it. We live in a far more dramatic and far more dangerous story than we really ever think. So the first strategy, so we're like the strategy of the enemy. The first strategy of the enemy is that I'm not really here. The devil says, I'm not really here. All this that you see going on is really all about you. It's a very tactical and strategic move, and it works. And let me read an amplified version of this. But first of all, let's turn to Daniel 10. We'll kind of see another side of things. Daniel 10, we're going to read verses 1 through 3. And this takes place after Daniel has been used by God a number of times to interpret visions and writings on the wall. Daniel has been very much used by God. And he has another vision, and he has trouble understanding it. So we'll pick up in chapter 10, verse 1. In the third year of Cyrus, king of Persia, a message was revealed to Daniel, whose name was called Belshazzar. The message was true, but the appointed time was long, and he understood it. That he understood the message, and understanding of the vision. In those days, I, Daniel, was mourning 3 full weeks. I ate no pleasant food, no meat, wine came into my mouth, nor did I anoint myself at all, until 3 weeks were fulfilled. Now, on the 24th day of the first month, as I was by the side of the great river, that is Tigris, I lifted my eyes and looked, behold, a certain man clothed in linen, whose waist was girded about without ephod, and his body was beryl. His face like the appearance of light, and his eyes were like torches of fire. His arms and feet like burnished bronze in color, and the sound of his words like the voice of a multitude. I'm going to skip ahead a little bit. All right, let's go down to verse 10. 11. And he said to me, this is the angel, O Daniel, man greatly beloved, understand the words that I speak to you and stand upright. For I have now been sent to you. While you were speaking this word to me, I stood trembling. And he said to me, do not fear, Daniel, for from the first day that you set your heart to understand and to humble yourself before your God, your words were heard. And I have come because of your words. But the prince of the kingdom of Persia withstood me and for 21 days. And behold, Michael, one of the chief princes, came to help me, for I had been left alone there with the king of Persia. And I've come to make you understand that what will happen to your people in latter days. So we get a sense of what goes on sometimes, and what we feel sometimes might be our problem, our own shortcomings. But let me read an amplified version of the story that John Eldridge writes in Waking the Dead. Something has happened that Daniel doesn't understand. I think we can all relate to that. We don't understand about 90% of what happens to us either. Daniel is troubled. He sets out to get an answer, but 3 weeks of prayer and fasting produce no results. What is he to conclude? If Daniel were like most people, by this point he'd probably have headed into one of the two conclusions. I'm blowing it, or God is holding out on me. He might try confessing every sin and petty offense in hopes of opening up the lines of communication with God. Or he might withdraw to a sort of disappointed resignation, drop the fast, turn on the television. In an effort to hang on to his faith, he might embrace the difficulty as part of God's will for his life. He might read a book called The Silence of God. That's the way people seem to handle this sort of thing these days. And he goes on and says, but we're all dead wrong. On the 21st day of the fast, an angel shows up and out of breath. In a sort of an apology, the angel explains to Daniel that God has actually dispatched him and answered Daniel's prayer the very first day he prayed, 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks ago, what is Daniel to do with that? and the very first day. And Daniel says to himself, well, thank you very much, but where have you been? And God says, Daniel, you have not blown it. And God, I'm not holding out on you, but there's a war going on. And so, the war goes on, and things happen around us, and we still seem to think that there is no war. C.S. Lewis puts it this way in The Weight of Glory. Do you think I'm trying to weave a spell? Perhaps I am. But remember your fairy tales. Spells are used for breaking enchantments as well as for inducing them. And you and I have the need of the strongest spell that can be found to wake us from this evil enchantment of worldliness, which has been laid upon us for nearly 100 years. Lewis is not being cute, he's being sober. This evil enchantment of worldliness is a way of looking at life given to us by our enlightenment, by our age of reason, by the modern era we use science to interpret. Even some churches refuse to see what is going on. And the whole kingdom, the whole world lies under a spell. Kind of like Narnia in the winter, or like Sleeping Kingdom of Sleeping Beauty. Or as the Bible puts it, the whole world lies under the power of the evil one. And some of us never stop to think about it. So, questions arise. Is abortion really about women's right to choose? Or is it because an enemy hates everyone born into God? Is gay marriage and the attack on traditional marriage really a matter of tolerance and personal preference? Or is it because Scripture tells us that marriage is a living metaphor of the gospel, and our enemy knows this and hates it with every bit of his being, knowing especially that Christ is the groom and the church is the bride? I have no doubt that the devil would love for there to be no brighter love when Christ returns. Are school shootings really because of troubled youth? If so, who and what caused that youth to be so troubled? Is a teenager stabbing another teenager in a restaurant parking lot down the street from us really about a high school basketball rivalry? Is it really because one school thinks one school is white trash and another school thinks the other school is a bunch of school-rich kids? What causes teenagers to face off against one another, throw money at the other one's taunting them? Where does that pride and arrogance come from? And what causes another school to call the other one white trash? Anyway, a couple years ago, we have a nice little neighborhood, and one of our neighbors has a sister that lived up in Ohio. It was probably about 9, 10 years ago. She came down quite a lot to visit. She loved Lexington. And we were standing out in the road one day, and she said, you don't know what a great existence you have here in Lexington. This is like a Norman Rockwell. You don't know what the rest of the world's like. And that was true back then, but things have changed. The war has come to Lexington, and we need to realize it. We have city councilmen step down because of corruption. We have murders. We have meth labs being discovered almost every week. It goes on and on. We have children from devil with their hands on our necks. We have all kinds of things going on. And it's time that we realize that the war is here. And the enemy seems to make all these, not to make these stories less relevant or I don't mean to diminish those things we just talked about. But the enemy makes them into soap operas. He makes them into things that we're distracted by, so that he hides behind them. And And he orchestrates these things as he seeks to destroy us, and yet all we see is the soap opera. The Bible tells us the devil prowls around like a roaring lion, seeking those to devour. It tells us we do not wrestle with flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against rulers of darkness, against spiritual hosts of wickedness. The Bible also tells us in Ephesians 5 that it says, wake up, O sleeper. Be very careful, for then how you shall live, because the days are evil. The Message translation puts it this way. So watch your step, use your head, make the most of every chance you get. These are desperate times. Christianity isn't a religion about going to Sunday school, potluck dinners, being nice, holding car washes, sending out secondhand clothes off to Mexico, as good as all those things might be. This is a world at war. Something large and immensely dangerous is unfolding all around us. We are caught up in it, and above all doubt, we have been given a key role to play. So after that's kind of summarizes stage one of the enemy strategy. Stage two would be intimidation. The next level it picks up. When we begin to question the devil, to resist his lies, to see his hand in the ordinary trials of our lives, then he steps up the attack. He turns to intimidation and fear. Matter of fact, as we think about this right now, we might be wondering right now, do we really want to get involved in all this? Because the enemy is ruthless. He never stops, and he hates with every bit of his being. Do we really want to get involved in this? Well, we really don't have a choice. We're in it. We're his targets. Satan wants to get us to agree with his fear and intimidation because he knows if we don't, if we live the way that God has designed us to live, then he has a lot to fear. Because we are a huge threat to him. He doesn't want us waking up and fighting back, because when you do, he loses. Through the resurrection and the blood of Jesus Christ, he is a defeated foe. So he's going to try to keep us from taking a stand. And he's been pretty effective. He moves from subtle, hidden activities now to an open assault. We'll find thoughts coming crashing down on us. Fears and doubts. Envy of other people and their situations. All sorts of stuff begins to fall apart. You know, that's what it might be. Broken down cars. Well, this could be anything. And our faith begins to go paper thin. We doubt that God's really there. We doubt that there's really power. Well, the Bible tells us differently. Joshua 1. I really like the whole book of Joshua, particularly the first couple of chapters, where God keeps saying, be bold and courageous. Be bold and courageous. And he has Joshua do some strange things. A man of war is asked to march around Jericho. But anyway, be strong and courageous. Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be terrified nor discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. Exodus 15:3. The Lord is a warrior. The Lord is his name. Jeremiah 20:11. But the Lord is with me like a mighty warrior. So my persecutors will stumble and will not prevail. This one I really like, Isaiah 42:13. The Lord will go forth like a warrior. He will arouse his zeal like a man of war. He will utter a shout. Yes, he will raise a war cry, and he will prevail against his enemies. Deuteronomy 28:7. The Lord will cause your enemies who rise up against you to be defeated before your face. They shall come out against you one way and flee before you 7 ways. We've all heard this. We pray that more than once. This is where our strength is. This is where our strength is revealed. And yes, even increased when we apply it. So we need to stand on what is true and not let go. That's all there is to it. I've been reading a number of books by Kenneth Hagin, some on healing, some on faith, some on the Word of God. One is called, what is it called? Right thinking, wrong thinking, I think something like that. And like I said, some of them deal on healing. But one was particularly interesting. It was entitled, How to Keep Your Healing. And so Kenneth goes on to explain that, first of all, two things are required for healing to take place. One is for the person praying to fully believe with all their heart, mind, and soul that God is a healer and that He desires to heal us. That Jesus came to earth to do the Father's will, and He healed. So God's will is for us to be healed. The second aspect of being able to be healed is that the person you're praying for needs to also believe that God is a healer and that He desires to heal. So, Kenneth would ask someone, do you believe God will heal you? And if they say, well, I hope so, or I think so, well, then he goes back into the scriptures and tries to relate to them the truth of what they need to believe. But anyway, so the how to keep your healing, Kenneth Hagin goes on to say, you pray for healing, you're healed. But what Satan does, he comes back with you with symptoms over and over again. And we are tempted to believe the symptoms instead of standing firm and saying, no, I'm healed. Leave me alone. It's done. But instead, sometimes we believe the symptoms. We believe that, oh my gosh, I'm not healed. And that's just a parallel to standing firm. Not necessarily just healing, but anything. God says it, we believe it, it's done. And when the enemy comes against us, we stand firm. We say no. God has authority here. God has done a great and mighty thing. So, stage 3 then. It's a tough stage. This is after we resisted the deception, we've resisted intimidation and fears, attempted to cut a deal, to give it up, to sell out, because it's gotten tough, to lay it all down. William Gurnell in The Christians in Full Armor says it this way: persisting to the end will be the burr in your saddle, the thorn in your flesh. When the road ahead seems endless and your soul begs an early discharge, it weighs down every other difficulty of your calling. We have known many who have joined the army of Christ, and like being a soldier for a battle or two, but have soon had enough and ended up deserting. They impulsively enlist for Christian duties and are just as easily persuaded to lay it down. Like the new moon, they shine a little in the first part of the evening, but go down before the night is over. So that is a reality we all have seen, and it's a reality we all need to be aware of. But standing on the promises of God, standing firm, and knowing what's going on is a good defense to all this. So we have a crucial role to play in all this, and this is really what the devil does not want us to know, as well as these other things. But the story of our life is a story of a long and brutal assault on our heart by the one who hates us and knows that when we are all that God wants us to be, we are dangerous. And so from the day we were born, the devil comes against us. I would describe it as fiery darts and arrows of the devil. And wounds are inflicted, and we slowly, over the years, become less and less what God wants us to be. So we are not what we think we are. It's kind of like, and I know this is mostly a female audience, but for the men in here, maybe they remember The Matrix. It was probably not much of a chick flick, but it was a pretty neat movie for men. The star in the movie is Neo, and it was a hard movie to understand, but he sees himself only as Thomas Anderson, a computer programmer. as the drama unfolds and really begins to heat up, and the enemy hunts him down, and he says to himself, this is insane. Why is this happening to me? What did I do? I'm nobody. I didn't do anything. It's a dangerous conviction we probably all share. Later, he realizes that he is the one who will break the power of the matrix. It's a nice analogy as to what we are faced with in life and what we believe. The devil's hell bent on destroying us before we realize the glory of what God has set for us to do. Another movie, Fellowship of the Rings. My son would be proud that I mentioned that movie. Gandalf describes the movie kind of as the sequence of events unfold, and he's narrating part of it. He says, fate has chosen him, a fellowship will protect him, and evil will hunt him. Again, another parallel to the life of a Christian. We have been chosen, we are protected, but the evil will hunt us down. If we could believe that about our lives and come to know that it's really true, everything would possibly change. We'd be so much more able to interpret the events unfolding around us and against us. We'd be so much more able to fight. And so that's kind of the view of what's going around, what's going on, and we've covered everything but the last three things on our outline, and that is abide, band together, and fight. And you'll notice I had conquered there first because I thought, oh, how cool it would be to be ABC. I thought, man, that's a pastor thing, or that's a preacher thing. And then I thought, well, no, because it excludes the most important word of all, and that's fight. And so what do we do with this knowledge? And I think we're in a church that understands this very well. I know Miss Ruby and the women that pray on Monday night are foxhole, and they are pushing back the darkness, and they are covering each other with prayer, and they are praying for our community. And I know we have prayers going on every church service for our service. And I know we're praying for missionaries, and I know there's a lot of prayer going on in this church. And yet I think the church as a whole, not this church, but the church as a whole, is kind of like what we just saw played out by John Kerry, our, was he part of state or whatever, Secretary of State. When Putin invaded or sent troops in, he said, "No, wait a minute. You can't do that. That's 19th century behavior. We don't behave that way anymore. We are much more sophisticated than that. We're much more enlightened than that." And you know, Putin said to himself, "That's great. Keep thinking that way." And I hate to say this, but I was at a church the other night. We were doing a gymnasium for them. And before prayer time, they were complaining about how hard it had been to get to this point in developing this gymnasium. And I was not aware. I was working for the contract. I was not really in touch with this church until this point in time. But they had a lot of obstacles, and they went to prayer. They didn't even bring these obstacles or these issues up. They did not fight. And so I just kind of worry sometimes that the church might be like John Kerry. And so anyway, yeah, I'm afraid it is. I was thinking the other day, I don't know why it's getting to mind, but I remember back in the old days, in my early Baptist days, we used to sing Onward Christian Soldiers, particularly in Sunday nights. Great song. Cross of Jesus going before us. It was a war. It was a call to battle. You don't hear that song anymore. Matter of fact, in our old church, I remember we were, and I guess it was, I don't know if it was in the, anyway, we Bible memory thing that, huh? Online, I think. I don't know why it's so on my mind. But anyway, it may have been one of those things, but they were teaching the kids a different song. I may never march in the infantry, ride in the cavalry, shoot the artillery. I may never fly with the enemy, but boy, I'm in the Lord's army, yes sir. I thought, what kind of army is that? We're not fighting? Holy cow. What happened between all the Christian soldier and, yes sir, I'm in the Lord's army, and it doesn't do anything? And I thought, I can imagine 6 or 7-year-old boys, you tell them that they have a sword, they have a helmet and a shield, maybe throw a little cape, and they're all over the place. They're jumping around tables. They're heroes. They're fighting the enemy. But no, we don't want boys to act like that anymore. They need to sit quietly. And that's another thing that I think we're going to talk about next week. The assault on masculinity and femininity. It seems that the devil has been very successful, particularly against men, and convincing us that our role as Christian men is to be nice guys. Not to be warriors, not to fight, but to be nice guys. And so next week I think we'll look at the manhood of Jesus, not the deity of Jesus, but next week we'll look at the manhood of Jesus. I think we'll see someone that was a man, a man's man. And I've come to the conclusion that the last thing I want on my tombstone is, here lies Ted Talmadge, a dead nice guy. There's even more to life than being nice. Now the dead part's probably good, kind of thing. If I'm buried, I'd sure like to be alive. So we'll take that part off. But, the Lord Jesus was a lot more than a nice guy. And so we're going to look at that, hopefully next week, and maybe with Judy's help a bit about how femininity has been attacked, and how the crown jewel of God's creation, the woman, has, we'll get into that hopefully next week where we're going. So the Lord is coming to Lexington. What do we do? What do we need to do? 3 steps, I think. We might know, but first thing is, let me say this. I don't mean to be critical, but I was driving down to Columbia, and I was listening to radio, and you know how sometimes people get on the Christian station, they try to bring words of encouragement, stuff like that. And I was in need of encouragement, and they said, just keep your eyes on Jesus. Oh yeah, that's good. What does that mean? What does that mean? Keep your eyes on Jesus. I'm kind of visually maybe impaired, but I kind of think things through that way. And so I'm driving along thinking, what does that mean? And it kind of bothered me because all I could come up with was, okay, here I am. I'm seeing Jesus on his throne. And what bothered me was there's a separation there. And the other thing that bothered me was when I'm looking like this, there's a passivity there. I'm doing nothing. And so I looked at Romans. Let's look at Romans 15 real quick. This is the way I prefer to think of it. Let me just read it for you real quick. I am the true vine, and my Father is the vine dresser. Every branch in me that does not bear fruit, he takes away. And every branch that bears fruit, he prunes, that he may bear more fruit. And you are already clean because of the word which I have spoken to you. Abide in me, and I in you. And I think that's where the answer is. We abide in one another. As the branch cannot bear fruit of itself, unless it abides in the vine, neither can you unless you abide in me. I am the vine, and you are the branches. He who abides in me, and I in him, bears much fruit. That sounds good. For without me you can do nothing. If anyone does not abide in me, he is cast out as a branch and is withered. And they gather them and throw them into the fire, and they are burned. If you abide in me, and my words abide in you, you will ask what you desire, and it shall be done for you. By this my Father is glorified, and you will bear much fruit, so that you will be my disciples. As my Father loved me, I have also loved you. Abide in my love. If you keep my commandments, you will abide in my love, just as I have kept my Father's commandments and abide in his love. These things I have spoken to you, that my joy may remain in you, and that your joy may be full. So in abiding, we have joy, we have answered prayer, and we bear much fruit. So I'm sure that would have occurred on the radio was encouraging to many people, but to me, I like the closeness of abiding. I like the visual image that Jesus Christ is shoulder to shoulder with me, and that we are one, just as he and the Father are one. And I picture it almost like he's on my left side because his right hand of righteousness needs to be free, and my left hand needs to hold the shield, and my right hand needs to hold the sword. But these are just visual things that matter only to me. But we need to abide in Christ. Second thing is we need to band together. We cannot do this alone. Our enemy is ruthless, powerful, unstoppable, except by the blood and power of Jesus Christ. And so we need to realize that there is nothing that we do outside of Jesus Christ that can confront this evil. But we also need to band together as people of faith. And I know women seem to develop relationships a lot easier than men. They can develop a relationship with one another over a cup of coffee. Men are not that way. Men need to develop a level of trust before they confide in one another. I guess probably the most well-known example is men in the military who serve together under pressure, under danger. They bond relationship. They know they can trust one another. They know what people will do in time of difficulty and who will run or who will stay and fight. And so for men, it's a little more difficult. And I don't know exactly how to solve that, to be honest with you. This is more than an accountability group. This is more than asking, did you have a devotional every day? Did you treat your wife well? This is getting the foxhole together, covering each other in prayer, and praying away the darkness, praying against the darkness, praying for children that the devil has his hand on. And so somehow we men have to figure this out. We need to develop little groups of men that are in foxholes and they're fighting. It was interesting. My son's a basketball player, and a year or two ago he decided that he didn't want to play basketball for high school anymore, and he wanted to play church league basketball because it was more fun. Well, he had a lot of other good reasons, but the upside was that all his friends were playing basketball, and it would be fun, and he wanted to spend time with his friends instead of being in the gym practicing every spare minute of his life. And we understood all that. We were a little disappointed in a way because we had been probably watching him play basketball for 10 years or so. And when you drop out of the high school basketball team, that's kind of it. You don't get to come back. And but anyway, he was playing church league basketball for a couple of weeks, and it was fun. And so at one point in time, I asked him. I said, "Well, Max, do you miss the competition?" He goes, "Yeah, a little bit." He said, "But what I really miss is the guys." And it's kind of hard to understand. He was playing with the best friends, but the guys were the guys that he ran hours on end in practice with. The guys he knew that would come through and pinch. The guys he lost games with, the guys he won games with. There was a bond there. And so, we're in the war. We should be able to develop bonds. Somehow we need to figure out how to do that. All right, and then we move on to fight. There are some things I think we can do. I think the first thing is, if you haven't already, is enlist in this Ruby's boot camp. trash that's come upon me, all the assaults of the years, through the years. I think that's critically important. Because if not, in the heat of battle, those things become footholds, strongholds for the enemy. But I think a simple thing we all can do is put on the full armor of God every day. I think that's essential. Came across this little prayer I thought was a good example, and more than just saying I put on the full armor of God today. This comes out of, I forget, Balaam. Let me read this for you. Therefore, put on the full armor of God, so that when the evil day comes, you may be able to stand your ground. And after you've done everything, stand firm then, with the belt of truth buckled around your waist. Lord, I put on the belt of truth. I choose a lifestyle of honesty and integrity. Show me the truths I so desperately need today. Expose the lies I'm not even aware of that I'm believing. Put on the breastplate of righteousness and put it in place. And yes, Lord, I wear your righteousness today against all the condemnation and corruption. Fit me with your holiness and purity. Defend me from all assaults against my heart. And with your feet fitted with the readiness that comes from the gospel of peace. Lord, I do choose to live for the gospel at any moment. Show me where the largest story is unfolding, and keep me from being so lax that I think the most important thing today is the soap operas of this world. In addition to all this, take up the shield of faith, with which you can extinguish all the flaming arrows of the evil one. Jesus, I lift up every lie, every assault, and the confidence that you are good, that you have good in store for me. Nothing is coming today that can overtake me, because you are with me. Take the helmet of salvation. Thank you, Lord, for my salvation. I receive it in a new and fresh way from you. And I declare that nothing can separate me now from the love of Christ and the place I shall ever have in your kingdom, and the sword of the Spirit, which is the Word of God. Holy Spirit, show me specifically today the truths of the Word of God that I will need to counter the assaults and the snares of the enemy. Bring them to mind throughout the day. And then pray in the Spirit on all occasions, all prayers and requests. By the Holy Spirit, I agree to walk in your Spirit. Guide me, and I commune with you throughout the day. This is more than just saying I put on the armor of God. And I think this is necessary every day, as a minimum. Secondly, there are prayers of advancement. This one comes from Kenneth Hagin. Understanding that abiding in Christ and receiving the inheritance we have from him, the authority of his word, the power of the blood, and the power of the resurrection, we can tell the devil, the word of God says that Jesus defeated you. You are a defeated foe, devil. The New Testament, the new covenant that God has established with man through the blood of Christ, says that you have no authority over me, because Jesus was made a surety of a better testament. This new covenant says that you have no authority over Satan, but rather I have authority over you. Satan, leave me alone, because you are defeated. These are the beginning, I guess, of the battle. And I just pray that God leads us to the rest of the battle. And what to do is, he says, stand firm so that you will be ready for the evil day. Maybe we're in a period of training. Maybe he's preparing us for a much more evil day. Maybe the difficulties we're facing now, maybe the struggles we have right now, the attacks on our loved ones, are being used by God to wake us up. I'm reminded of an old show, a movie way back when called, I think it's on television, where everyone got fed up. They threw their TVs out the windows and they said, I'm mad as hell and I'm going to take it. And we'll clean that up for church. We'll say we're mad at hell. I think maybe some of these things are happening, and maybe that's the reaction we need to have. Maybe it's time to fight. Put on the armor of God. To declare and accept the power we have in Jesus' name. And pray against the things that are coming against us, and against our community, against our loved ones. It's time to be bold, it's time to be courageous. So that's the message for today. To summarize it, the billboard says it well. Cowards never start, the weak never finish, and the strong never quit. Let us all be strong. So, I went real long, didn't I? Sorry. So I think we have, I think you have a prayer meeting.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Perfect. Great. Great example of foxhole and yes, we
We do have a men's prayer meeting on Tuesday nights.
men's prayer meeting Tuesday nights. That's a good prayer meeting too. Sorry, that's a good prayer meeting too. I think there's another, wasn't it? Oh, yes. I think Sherry's going to come. Is Sherry here? Yeah. There she is. Okay. Sorry, Sherry.